We are reconvening the Board of Supervisors meeting and now turning to our study session on the campus and overall facility upgrades. Mr. Callaghy.
Mr. Byers, Mike Callaghy, the Assistant County Manager, and I'm just going to kick things off very quickly here. Really, it's a historic time for us. We've really never seen this type of building operation before in the history of this county. So it's a very exciting time, lots of moving parts, lots of people involved, as you can see here. The Project Development Unit was formed 1 year ago and right now has 12 projects either underway or in the pipeline, which is a remarkable feat that they've accomplished. We'll talk about 5 of those building projects this morning in this study session, namely the new parking structure on the campus, the new County Office Building 3, the Regional Operations Center, the relocation of the Lathrop House, and the Medical Center. And just as a way of a reminder, the PDU was formed because we wanted a team that would think of nothing but building structures from the ground up. And we wanted to reduce our lease space in the county. We wanted to bring our buildings into the 21st century with new technology while reducing our carbon footprint. We wanted to make government more accessible for our customers and give them a better experience while they were here. And we wanted to make our buildings seismically safe and create a better working environment for employees so they can collaborate. In today's study session, we'll hear first from our PDU director, Ms. Bazan, who will give us the updates. And I just want to compliment Debbie and Sam and her entire team here. They have done just a remarkable job of putting policies and procedures in place and working with the project managers and the architects and the builders. And they've done just a remarkable job in a very short period of time. We'll then hear from Mr. Calderon, who will update us on leases. And then we'll hear from Robert Mankia will talk about the budget, and then Jim Egemeyer will get up and talk about the Z&E and other features that we have to reduce our carbon footprint. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Bazan.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, Mr. President Pine, members of the board, Mr. Malpe, Mr. Byers. I am Debbie Bazan, the director of the Project Development Unit, and extremely happy to be here today. As Mike mentioned, we have 12 projects underway. We'll only be reporting out on 5 today. In the short period of time, I just wanted to point out I feel like moving mountains and trying to really get things going and freeing up log jams. To date, in this short period of time, with the help of my unit and my team, we've already executed or amended 175 contracts to date in that short period of time. So I just wanted to highlight that and point that out. With that being said, all those contracts, I think it's a perfect segue into introducing the budget folks, Robert Mankia, who will talk about the budget.
Good morning, President Pine and honorable members of the board, Mr. Malpe, Mr. Byers. My name is Robert Mankia, and I am the budget director for the county. This morning, I have been asked to walk you through the bonding capacity and overall impact to the budgets with these projects. The debt limit over the past decade has been at 4%. The number has served us well and has allowed us to stay within an acceptable debt limit at the rating agencies. As you see here, based on a 5-year average of our 18-19 debt limit today is set at approximately $103 million. Here we see our current debt in relation to the financing that we have done in the past. If we remove the Colma Creek flood control, which resides outside of the general fund, our debt limit for fiscal year 18-19 will be at $51 million and some change, leaving us approximately $51 million from the current debt limit today. Looking at the current debt services over the next 20 years, you can see here that our capacity grows, allowing for more borrowing capacity. The current $51 million that we have available between the current debt service and the debt limit, with a conservative rate of approximately 5%, will allow us approximately $790 million in borrowing capacity. We're missing slides.
Could you repeat that number again? What's
So 790 million is the $51 million that we have remaining between the current debt that we have today and that 4% limit of 103 is about $51 million. That $51 million, if borrowed at a rate of about 5%, will give us approximately 790 million in borrowing capacity.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. With that said, I think it is important that we look at our budget and what we believe we can afford and how that debt interplays with our AAA rating. This slide is showing a borrowing of $500 million at a conservative rate of 4.5. That would yield approximately a yearly debt service of $33 million, which you see in that light blue bar above the dark blue. As you see there, it still does not put us to the debt limit that we currently have at 103. Adding this to the top of the current debt, that we are still below the debt limit, we believe that it would be difficult but doable within our budget. I bring you back to a slide that we came to you in February when we did the mid-year presentation. In that slide, we were beginning to show how our current year expenditures are in the future exceeding what we believe to be our current revenues. So we believe that we need to be able to maintain that line as close as possible to each other so that we don't go over. At this time, we estimate that $23 million outlay, which is what you see there, is the $23 million in that piece. If we were to increase it by $33 million, that would add approximately $10 million to our current debt, bringing the line a little bit further apart. As you may recall, we have been talking about this difficult 5-year period of time where our board has prudently decided to pay down our unfunded pension liability, the debt service for the jail, which was structured heavy on the first 5 years. What is not reflected here is the outcome of our labor negotiations. As we stated in the past, continued conservative fiscal forecasting and prudent spending, we feel that $500 million is the maximum capacity that we can spend on the capital projects to preserve our AAA rating and maintain a structural budget. And I'll turn it back over to Deb.
Can I ask a quick
Yeah,
question?
go
I'm sorry.
ahead. I have one too.
You use the words, we have determined, we have analyzed, we have done this. Who is the we part of that
So
sentence?
the budget staff, myself, we've brought in Jim Sacco, we've talked to our financial advisor, we've had some conversations with some banks that currently do some of our debt services to try and figure out where we would land in regards to that AAA rating, in regards to our current debt, how that impacts the budget, and what we can see forecasting. Not always a perfect straight line in regards to how we're moving, but a little bit of recession and possibly a 1 to a 2% increase in revenues over time.
Okay, thank you for the answer.
So I just want to make sure I understand. So I think what you're saying is, it's the team's judgment that, anything over that 500 million is the kind of, well, I'll call it the prudent limit.
Correct.
For a variety of reasons. But you said earlier that, I guess under our stated policies of 5, we could borrow as much as 790 million. I'm just trying to understand.
Correct. So
how
the
to
debt limit. So the debt limit at 103, with the difference today of 51 to 51 million. So the $51 million currently that we are below the debt limit today would result, if we had a 5% rate, would result in $790 million worth of borrowing. The 4%, we have never gone to the 4% as a county. We've always been under the 4%,
Yeah.
and that's part of the rating agencies' look at what your debt limit is in comparison to your ratios. And with that, we've never gone really over 3%, which is why we feel that to maintain the AAA rating, you would still need to be under that 790, which is
Right,
approximately
right.
$500 million. So we're saying that if you went to the 790, it would be difficult to continue to maintain a AAA rating, which would increase our payments in the future. If we were to stay under that 790 and stay maybe within that 3% range, it would continue to allow us the AAA rating and give us the capacity to borrow at a better rate. The whole idea is to not push yourself out and increase your rate, because that's just going to cost more over
Right.
the course of the 30 years.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. I apologize. I think our slides are slightly out of order, but I'd like to, you had mentioned earlier that Jim Egemeyer and Office of Sustainability is everywhere. They're with us as well and embedded deeply into all of our projects. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jim.
Good morning, President Pine, Supervisors Mr. Malpe and Mr. Byers. And Ms. Bazan is right. The Office of Sustainability is everywhere, and in turn assisting Ms. Bazan and the PDU unit here today with this very important component of our capital improvement projects. As you may recall, the county's municipal green building policy was adopted back in December 2017. This is the county's third version to the initial policy that was adopted back in 2001. The development and final recommendation to your board back in December was a very comprehensive and collaborative approach involving numerous departments from the county and expert consultants in the energy conservation fields. This policy itself has three components: LEED certification, energy efficiency, and zero net energy. The key focus here is on energy efficiency and energy reductions. By planning up front to use energy efficient, the design strategies reflect that in its process. The policy also requires a Green Building Steering Committee to oversee and assist in advancing the sustainable performance of county projects. And last, the policy outlines the specific procedures and responsibilities for 5 county departments to carry out your policy. So with all these efforts in design, process, procedures, materials, construction, and long-term maintenance, all of these come with a price, but not in a negative way. We are planning and constructing buildings and environments to use for years to come. And this is our opportunity to demonstrate our leadership in sustainability and adapting to climate change by lowering our impacts on the environment. Before I conclude my thoughts, I also want you to be aware that we are also working with Nelson Nygaard Consulting in the transportation field to improve our commute alternatives program for county employees. So their recommendations will be proposing a number of transportation demand management, or TDM, strategies to help us reduce the number of single occupant vehicles coming to our campus. So these projects showcase and demonstrate to the public our priorities and commitment to the environment, county employees, the public, and our communities and future generations. I just really wanted to share those background thoughts with you as you consider and understand these projects that the PDU unit is proposing today. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic over back to Debbie.
If I may, Mr. Egemeyer, on the work on the TDM, which is, really important, and, we've seen places like Stanford, and when major corporations receive their entitlements now, they have to adopt very strenuous TDM. So I guess I had 2 questions for you. Is when do you think that work will be completed? And then second, I believe the city of Redwood City is also working on a big TDM effort because of the growth of business and residents in their downtown. And are you coordinating with them on that TDM work?
Yes, as well as kind of the Stanford campus that is in the South Redwood City area. So to your first question, I believe that we're looking at the late summer, early fall time to kind of drill down into a number of options for that we'll be considering as part of our commute alternatives program that we'll be reviewing internally. So that's kind of the timeline that I'm aware of. And I would need to check and just make sure, but I'm pretty sure that they're having conversations with Redwood City in regards to their TDM efforts and our alignment. Because I know there's been a number of discussions around our commuter bus and what we're able to provide our county employees, but also the possibility for partnerships outside of just employment with the county, but with our adjoining cities. And
Okay, because I would think that, yeah, for Redwood City to have a successful TDM, we'd have to be integrated.
yeah.
Mr. President, just one comment that depending on the nature of the recommendations, that some of them may involve the necessity to meet and confer with our employees before they're implemented. So just to put that in your thinking.
Could you give an example of what might have to be?
Parking restrictions might be one.
So the extent that there was less parking, that's actually something that would fall into negotiations?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim. Again, just to understand, this Office of Sustainability is deeply embedded in our trailers and attends meetings and weighs in on everything from the parking structure size and recommendation, the TDMs, and then overall helping with design as we try and achieve the Z&E goals. And I'm going to go backwards a little bit because I think we're out of order here. So with this, I'd like to, one of the other things that, again, we were charged with, PDU's creation was charged with trying to reduce our lease spaces. And so with that, I want Nick to report out and just see how we're doing and how we've been doing.
Good morning, Board, honorable board members, County Manager, County Council. What I'd like to do is briefly provide the board with an understanding of what our lease portfolio looks like. We currently have 46 leases throughout the county, 37 of which are office space, medical office space, industrial space, and then 9 consist of cellular towers to support our communication system. Of the office, medical office, and industrial, we currently have just under 603,000 square feet, and that does not include the radio sites. And this year, we're estimated to pay just over $18 million in rent and operating expenses. When you look at what our office space, what we pay for office space, we are paying about $2.79 per square foot per month in rent alone, and that does not include operating expenses. What PDU was tasked with was looking at how do we reduce our lease footprint, and the 3 facilities that are most impacted by this are 801 Gateway in the city of South San Francisco, which houses the health system, 1320 Marshall Street, which is down the road from here, and it houses the radio shop and the data center, and then 262 Harbor in Belmont, which currently houses BHRS. And what we will do is we will be working to reduce our presence at 801 Gateway down to 10,000 square feet, and we will be allowing 1320 Marshall and 262 Harbor to expire by their own terms, which means over time we'll be able to recognize a reduction in our rent cost. And so you'll see over a 10-year period, this is what we're projecting. It's important to note that while the county will reduce our rent payments by this amount, we're not recognizing a savings of this amount. What we're doing is instead of paying a landlord this money, we will now be using this money to pay down the debt service and pay for operating expenses that we incur for operating our own county-owned facilities. So this, while a portion of this over time will turn into savings, the rest of it will be used to essentially pay down our own expenses. But what's important to note is that we're able to better control our own costs at county-owned facilities than we are when we're in the open market. As everyone knows, and as your board knows, right now we're in one of the most competitive commercial real estate markets in the country, and so what we're paying is subject to those market trends. And so we'll be able to better control our costs over time, which obviously will eventually turn into savings for the county. And with that, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer. If not, I'll turn this back over to Deb.
Just one question to the president.
Yes.
On Harbor Boulevard, what department is that? Is that the Department of Housing?
That's BHRS. We currently have,
BHRS?
I'm sorry, through the president, Supervisor Horsley, that's BHRS. Currently, the county has 7 different leases at Harbor Park. So we have BHRS, HSA, Housing, Sheriff's Office. We have many different functions there. And so this is just one of the many leases that we have.
So we're assuming that they would move into,
They'll be moving into, through the president, Supervisor Horsley, those services would be moving into COB3.
But what about the other 6?
For the time being, our intention is to leave them there. Many of them have leases that don't expire for anywhere between 4 and 6 more years. So those are things that we're going to have to assess, and we're going to have to look at what we can do with them. But right now, the intent is to leave them there. And many of the functions that are at Harbor Park are functions that need to be provided directly in the community and are embedded in the community. And because of the clientele that we serve, they're used to going to that facility. They understand the transit route to get there. And so we try to make sure that we leave them there to not create any adverse impacts to how services are delivered.
Also, Mr. President, with respect to HSA, which are the majority of the leases there, the unique funding sources support leasing rather than owning your own facility.
Right, I was just about to ask about that. So, of our 600,000 square feet, I don't know if anyone can tell us like roughly how much of that will always be leased because of what you just stated. I mean, I know Davis is big, but does anyone have a swag at that? Is that we're always going to have that lease because of the way the health reimbursement works?
Yes, sir, President Pine, and I'm happy to get you that number. I have the numbers in front of me, but for me to do the math here in front of you, I think might take
that'd be
a little bit
interesting to know,
longer than
'cause-
you're willing to.
We're never going to we're never going to zero on lease space for that reason, right?
Right. Well, the 2 reasons, and the second reason is a number of those are client-facing services,
Client-facing, too.
and they just have to be in the community.
Yeah. Okay. I guess maybe you could let us know kind of what's the universe of space that we hope to in due time, get into our own buildings, right? Because there's 2 buckets that client-facing and health reimbursed ones that we're probably going to leave as is. So kind of what's that whole universe that we can work with to move?
Yes, sir. I'm happy to work on that and provide that to the board.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. I'm going to try and get us back on track. Okay. So the San Mateo Medical Center, before I introduce the project manager and Sam Lynn, who's the manager of PDU, I'd like to just say a couple words about the medical center. So last year, we conducted an analysis. As you remember, we have OSHPD requirements, and we have to become seismically retrofitted by 2020 for non-structural and 2030 for structural. So we weighed the options of retrofitting that existing building, which was constructed in 1954, or building new. The decision was made to construct new, and I will have them give us an update. Before we do that, I would like to just remind one of the things we were charged with was reducing employees on that site. It's a very impacted site, and leaving the employees that are there and best suited to support the hospital function. The rest of the employees will be relocated either to South City campus eventually or to COB3. And some of the employees are from the health system are coming from the 801 Gateway. So there's been a really great effort in shuffling the departments and suiting them appropriately to their function and what it is they do and need to do. So again, kudos to, Peter Shee. He's not here in the audience, but works for the health system. He's done a lion's share. He's, again, embedded with us and helping us understand what those departments do and how do we best situate them or suit them in locating them. And then also to to construct a new admin building under 70,000 square feet. Above that, we would have been building a parking structure on that site. So balancing all of these things, and I'm happy to report out we're going to achieve these goals. We're hitting our marks. I do want to also point out, and thanks to Supervisor Groom for her tremendous leadership on this project. We couldn't do it without her. Louise Rogers. We've already been out in the community for 3 neighborhood meetings that have been extremely well attended. The first 2 they had a lot to say, very vocal. I will say the last one we had was our best attended, and we got a lot of positive feedback. So I'm really happy about that. And again, Supervisor Groom and Louise have been instrumental in that success. And with that, I think I would like to turn it over to Sam and Paul Hundle. Paul Hundle is the project manager. And because this is a study session, I hope you don't mind, but we're going to be moving boards in front using a microphone. We've got the models. We actually are going to walk you through the rock project at one point on a virtual tour. So again, it's going to be a lot of different delivery methods.
Excellent.
Thank you, Debbie. Good morning, supervisors. Mr. Moby, Mr. Byers.
Oh,
I hope you can see this. The implementation of this San Mateo Health System campus upgrade project will achieve 3 main objectives. First, by end of 2019, we will be fully comply with the state OSHPD seismic requirement in the whole hospital area. And the second is, of course, Debbie mentioned earlier, this will resolve the ongoing congestion and the shortage of parking space over at the hospital site as well as the neighborhood. And this is achieved through the decommissioning of the old building, obsoleted building, as well as the constructing the smaller but very well planned, effective new building so that we can freeze up a lot of space for the parking. And the third is that by the time when we go through this consolidation process and planning, we would be able to rejuvenate a new campus appearance as well as incorporated a lot of environmental features into the outlook. And last but not least is that we will give a very completely different wayfinding, but it's very clearly wayfinding for the visitors visiting the service as well as the hospital. And later on, project manager Paul Handel would walk us through. I think this is probably one of the most complicated projects of all the projects PDU is currently managing. In essence, it's composed of 12 or more than 12 components under the umbrella of the campus upgrade project. And each one of them is really interdependent and critical to the success in parts of the project. So we actually will not be able to do this alone. And like Debbie mentioned earlier, we have great support and collaboration from the health system staff under the leadership of Director Louise Rogers, Peter Shee, the senior manager, and also the COO of the hospital, DeAndre James. And the team actually have a very strong synergy and a commitment to the meet daily to work out the obstacle, the roadblocks, and also provide a very cost-effective solution in a timely fashion. And because this is a construction in a very busy hospital facility, So there's a lot of safety, the logistic planning, and the traffic management that they have to deal with. And I just want to praise the team for the strong synergy and the commitment to get this resolved. With that being said, I want to turn over the time to our project manager, Paul Handel, to walk us through the highlights of this project.
Thank you, Sam. Good afternoon, Honorable Board, County Manager, and County Council. I would like to quickly orient the board on the layout of the existing campus here. So if you look at this slide, everything in white here is the existing campus that was constructed in 1990s, and we also call this as a newer part of the campus. The yellow on the top here is the old part of the hospital. It is also referred to as 1954 building or the administration building. And this is the building that is currently not in compliant with California seismic code and must be retrofitted prior to January 1st, 2020. And this is the health services building off of 37th Avenue. So our project in essence involves demolition of 1954 building and the health services building and construction of a small non-OSHPD 70,000 square feet administration building. What you see on the screens and over here is the bird's eye view of the future campus. This portion in the back, we're calling it as an administration building. This is approximately 50,000 square feet. And this over here, joining the link joining the administration building and the rest of the hospital is really called the link building. As Sam mentioned, this really creates a prominent entrance to the hospital as all of the public facing functions to the hospital will be housed in this link building. And this is also right next to the parking. As you recall, right now the main entrance to the hospital is over here at Edison and 39th Avenue, while rest of the parking is to the west of the campus. So this really does create a more prominent entrance to the hospital, easy wayfinding, and of course there's additional parking that's created as a result of this project as we are reducing the total square footage of the campus by 100,000 square feet. All in all, going from the existing state to this new state, as Sam mentioned, there's a series of 12 projects, and we are working closely with the health and the medical center, of course, to minimize the disruption to the patient services that are happening out there. So right now, our focus right now is to relocate all the essential services that are offered in this building to the existing parts of the hospital, which happens to be this nursing wing and the central plant. And we are committed to get that done before January 1st, 2020, as that's the state deadline. With that being said, if there are no questions on the plan here, I would like hand over the mic to Debbie to go over the timeline.
Thank you, Paul. So if I can,
That's one quick question.
Yeah.
So what the new construction is, those aren't separate. Are those separate buildings, or are they actually kind of built right off of the older building?
Yeah, so in order to streamline our construction logistics, our initial plan was to demolish the 1954 and construct a building here, which was very challenging in terms of the logistics because this is the operational hospital. So our team collaborated with the architects, and we came up with a more streamlined plan, whereas we are building this portion, which we are calling the admin building, which is the 50,000 square feet in this empty parking lot here.
Yeah.
Then the occupants from this 1954 building will be moved into this portion, vacating this building. So we'll then demolish this and create this additional piece, which we are referring to as a link building. So it will be, this piece is 20,000. So the overall square footage is 70,000 for the 50,000 for the admin, 20,000 for the link, but it will be constructed in two different phases because of the sequencing.
Okay.
thanks, Paul. So if we can just lay these down on the side, although I love hiding behind them.
Do you want to make a comment now, Supervisor Groom?
You're finished with the health center presentation? Oh, okay. You're taking the boards away.
Just, yeah. This again is just a view from the street from 37th Avenue, and I think they've highlighted some of the beautiful features. It's an exciting project. It is complex with a lot of moving parts, and the neighbors, really, they're important to us in making sure that we keep them in the loop. With that, this is again a timeline of the different sequencing and steps. What you have highlighted in blue, I've also provided those for you in your packets, is opportunities for the board will be in front of the board. So today, in fact, you've approved the CM at risk contract on consent, and so our contractor for this project will be Trubeck, and that was approved by you this morning. So you can see aggressive timeline. Construction is hopefully we're going to be on track and will be completed at the end of 2021. I do want to highlight a couple things with the budget. A year ago, the budget was approved at $99.8 million, and we are tracking at about $110 million for a few reasons, some of which are the Z&E and a few other of the elements. But I do want to point that out. And that is it for the medical center.
Mr. President, can I make a couple of remarks? You know, as you all know, this is a really complicated site because of the dense and narrow neighborhood, the big apartment complex that is right a block away, who contribute a great deal to the parking problem in the neighborhood, for which we are blamed most of the time. So I think the sensitivity of Debbie's team and the working with the neighborhood, we have really made great progress. I've been working with that neighborhood since I was back on the city council. They still don't like all of us a lot, but they're coming around because Debbie's team has been so sensitive to what they have said in our earlier meetings, and we've made some of those changes, and we'll continue to make some of the changes. We've done some small things which I think have helped. Public Works planted some trees to kind of shelter our parking lot so it wasn't quite as obtrusive into their front yard. We've talked with them about the color scheme and the landscaping that will be done when the project is finished. So just last week we had another meeting with them, and they all left, I think, quite content and quite convinced that we had tried our darndest to really meet their needs as well as meeting our needs. And we'll continue to work with them, but I think we've really made great progress. And by moving ultimately 300 employees off the campus, we free up so much of that parking, and which then frees up some of the congestion in the neighborhood.
Mr. President, if I just might also add what Deb's team didn't touch on, they talked on the major components of the project. There are a number of functions within the existing hospital itself that as part of this project have to be moved and relocated, which also is a complexity among the complexities that Deb talked about.
Thank you. Yes, all of that is true. And thank you for the kind words about my team. I have to say, kudos to them. For the community meeting, they went door to door in the surrounding neighborhood and presented flyers letting them know. We want to really make sure that they do know we are hearing them and listening. It's important to us, as to all of us. So the COB3 project, and you touched on that a little bit, is we are relocating an additional 300 employees off of not only the medical center site, but the 801 Gateway and the Alameda site into the COB3, working closely with the health department. And again, putting those departments down here that are best suited. So why are we doing COB3? A couple of things that came up. And one, it was to create a government building that allows for ease of public access. That was important, and that was a mission and a thought going in as a driving factor. And it was also to accommodate the additional 300 employees that will be coming to this site from various departments, and an opportunity to right-size our county departments. Again, I use the county council's department as an example always, and they've heard me say it, is they really have people in desk under a stairwell because they've really run out of space. So it's our opportunity to right-size the county functions here. Again, the supervisors, Canepa and Horsley, have been providing great leadership and sit on our core team and help guide us through this process. And it's been very exciting. It's different. It's great. The departments that will be ultimately relocated in this building will be the department, the Board of Supervisors, the board chambers, the county manager's office, health system, county council, human resources, and the one-stop shop opportunity that we're still trying to create, and that'll be located in the lobby. Supervisor Slocum, with some arm twisting, has agreed to participate and spearhead our technology group. Yes, you said it.
No one better.
So we're
No one
happy to
better.
have that leadership on COB3. And with that, I will.
It all works.
What's that?
He's going to make sure it all works.
Yes. And again, creating a civic hub. So I'm gonna walk over here before I introduce. Okay, can you hear me? So a couple of things, and I'm hoping people can get up and out of their seats. So I brought this model along to show you years ago. This is, initially was proposed or thought to. We could have done this, just a big block on the square to the ground. This parking structure is not what it is, but instead we decided to actually open it up. And so when I mean open it up, here, the orientation of these two models are the same, but the public and the county employees and the visitors to the center, we're not creating a fortress where we're blocking off access. We want to portray this transparency and this accessibility. So to actually have the opportunity to flow through and to walk, and I'm going to lift the building. I am Godzilla. No. It's very heavy and I'm super strong. Underneath the building, again, this will be the board chambers. We're envisioning a way that it'll be not, when it's not in session, could be opened up and be used for other alternatives, other uses, with some great platform. Possibly, some topography changes where we have a hillside, so people can congregate and to meet. Again, the scalloping of the building, one of the things we loved is the way that it actually does blend with our parking structure here. So we thought that was a good fit. And then by not creating a very wide or dense building, it allows for a lot of sun to come through. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sam and to Catherine Chan. Catherine Chan is the project manager on this. And we do have the architect here, Stephen with Studio Gang. And so he's also here to help to, describe this certainly probably far better than I. Yeah. The Civic Hub is going to be hopefully under here. Again, opportunities for spaces to be utilized. Yeah, so right now, just to give an orientation, we do have, this is a street. What we'd like to do is turn this into a pedestrian promenade. So you'll see the additional greenery, and taking that street and turning it into a pedestrian promenade is the idea. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sam.
Thank you, Debbie. The last project was the most complicated project, but this project is probably the most exciting project. It's long overdue. I think we have a lot of invaluable inputs from the supervisor, Hosley, Kanapa, and Mr. Moby, Mr. Byers, and Mr. Callaghy. This building will reflect the core value of our county in terms of transparency, in terms of embracing the public engagement, in terms of the respect of the environment, as well as the make this very workplace friendly to the employees. This building, I truly believe, will be the showcase of our county's leadership in the area of zero net energy, as well as the environmental sustainability. Those guiding principles will be deployed and embedded into the details and all phases of the design of this project. So I believe 3 years from now, when the project is open to the public, it will truly show that this building is really has that gravitas of the building, public space. And not only that, it would be also provide a very welcoming and friendly space for our citizens. And I think we're going to have a lot of technology, updated technology embedded into this facility with Supervisor Slocum's help. And lastly, but not the least, is that it's going to be a terrific, open, and great place to work for the employees. And I'm sure this building will stand the test of time with its quality of the design, the construction, and its functionality. So without further ado, I'm going to give the time to project manager, give to Debbie.
I'm going to jump in. Thank you. Just a couple of things I wanted to highlight is, again, when we did this, we're thinking of the concept is, wow, it's going to be really shadowy and shaded underneath the building. And that's actually not the case. As you can see, this here is the architects have actually designed, as the sun rotates, you'll have an opportunity to sit either in the shade or the sun. It actually goes all the way down to the ground level. So you'll be able to take your pick. So with that, I have a couple more slides. We can lay this down and I can walk us through the costing so far. If you guys can remove that, thanks. That's okay. So as you can see, this project originally, it was slated for $86 million, and that was at 121,000 square feet. That was a year ago, and when we really got into the meat of it, we realized that the health system, we swagged it. They're bigger than we thought, and we wanted to do the right thing and right size this. So that building has grown. The 121,000 square feet is where we get the 86 million. Today, we're up just under a 200,000 square feet mark, and the project is tracking at about $151 million to date. That does include all of the Z&E, added square footage, and as you can see, we're planning on starting this building in September of 19, and if all goes well, we'll be finished in December of 2020. Percentage of how the building slices, the health system alone takes up almost 50% of the building. So it was one of those things, either leave them on the medical center campus or, appropriately locate them down here. I do want to highlight that functions that are staying at the medical center are ones that support the hospital. Any questions on that project? Supervisor Slocum or Canopy?
Just make a quick comment that when we first looked at potential iterations of this building, at one time we looked at essentially a box, I don't mean it to be, it was exactly a box. We looked at making a significant portion of the property to be open space, and it would have, of course, been a taller building. And then the architect came up with the other idea, and actually it was really Supervisor Canopa's idea to utilize the whole property and then conceivably have like a center. Of course, it still was rectangular, and then the architect translated that vision into what you see there. And when we saw that, I think both of us thought this is exactly what we were looking at, something that is different. We believe will withstand the test of time, gives lots of lighting for our staff. It should be a great place to work. And at the same time, it really enhances Redwood City in the sense that was the other thing we were looking at. We know how important the plaza has been for the old courthouse. And so we both wanted the idea of having, and that's one of the reasons we were originally talking about having some portion of that as open space. But the architect achieved having that entire ground floor to be spectacular. There was another option that we saw, which was the chambers outside of and down at the ground level, and with the potential of that really struck us as something as a great opportunity, again, for Redwood City, because it could be an event center for a variety of different events, basically. And so we thought, when we saw that, I think we both agreed that the architect really took had a great vision that incorporated a lot of the ideas that the board had expressed in the past. And so we really were excited about it.
Thank you. I just spoke with Supervisor Slocum, had a tremendous idea, and I never thought of this, but it makes sense. That area, you talked earlier about the hardscape area in front of the museum, and then what Supervisor Slocum said was really profound, and maybe we just talked about age-friendly cities, and I agree with him in its totality, is what do we do around creating that green space, and is that a area where seniors can older Americans can go and socialize, right? And so, I think that was a good observation. In terms of the process, I've just been extraordinarily pleased. I think we've gotten a good, solid group of people, and I think it started. There's always magic, right? You think about magic. You think, what do you do to create these teams of people, right? And so I think what we did is, I know John Byers, Mr. Malpe, Supervisor Horsley, Deb. I think we have the right team for the right time. And then I think what we did that was just exceptional, is we took a chance on an architect. And, I think, in the stock market, maybe this is the wrong analogy, but when you buy a stock, you look at different things. How's the stock perform? There's a risk? And you and we took a huge risk with Studio Gang. Actually, I think it's incredible. I've just found out recently that she's winning all these sort of awards as this big, award from the Italian architects. It's above my pay grade. I'm a very simple man, a simple person. All these. Thank you, Carol. Maybe not. But sometimes, but it's just amazing. I mean, we took a chance on this female architect, probably one of the most renowned female architects, and we're working cohesively with their team. And so I think, and I have to say this, we initially looked at some of these architects, very cookie cutter, very well established, but it was just the same thing that we've seen forever. You know what I mean? Same design, quite boring. But what we've done is, I think we have the right team, the right space, the right location. I'm sort of, Warren Slocum says to me sometimes, "God, you're just such a out there thinker." No, he never said that. And so, but I was thinking to myself, I'm like, you think of San Francisco. Well, we're not San Francisco. There's 20 cities. You think of Santa Clara County. We're not Santa Clara County. We're San Mateo County. And we have the opportunity to take a building that was built, and John Malpe will correct me, it's the History Museum now, but the old county center was built, 1911?
The Hall of Justice was built in 1954. But
No,
I'm not sure
not 54, but the one over here. The one.
I'm not sure if it's...
Courthouse is 1906, I think. 1906. And so the way I sort of look at it is we have the old there, and then we're going to have the new. And so hopefully, and I got to tell you, this whole board of supervisors, Carol, Warren, Don, not Don, you're not Don, Dave, and Don, have just been so excited and so open about it. And so when you have that sort of synergy and that momentum, we have the opportunity to do great things. So, I'm excited to be a part of it, and let's keep moving the ball forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me just say one thing before you start out. I was on this committee, this building committee.
You're on it.
But because my ideas were too creative, I got booted off, and instead President Horsley nominated Supervisor Canepa, and I've never been the same since. But you've all done good work even without me.
I'd like to point out to Supervisor Canepa that 25 years ago it was the year of the woman, and so thank God we've got a woman architect.
Yes, amen to that.
Well, thank you. And
I'll just give my quick 2 cents, just because it is such an exciting proposal. I mean, the things that I care about, and I know we all care about, is transparency in government. Having someplace that we're really proud of, that really works for our employees, with having, the cutting edge environmental features. And, I'm kind of sick of government, the central building, the hub building of our county should be, should have, should convey these principles and be a place that's notable and kind of highlights that, public service is important and good things can happen. So I think everyone did a really, really, really nice job.
Thank you. I'll remind Supervisor Canepa and Supervisor Horsley, I don't know if they'll recall this, but in one of our sessions, it was very important to them to make sure that we don't present a backdoor feeling to Redwood City. And so they really challenged the architects team to not create or put our backs to the city and to create an open environment. And again, with their great leadership and input, I think we've been able to achieve that. So very happy with that. The next one is the parking structure. So again, I'll talk just briefly on the why. Why are we building a new parking structure? So today on today's date, we have about a 300 stall deficit. On top of that, we're going to be bringing additional employees to the site for parking. And we also want to seize this opportunity to reduce assigned parking if we can. So when you have assigned parking, if someone's on vacation or out sick for the day, that space remains vacant. So we're not proposing to eliminate all assigned parking, but we would like to reduce assigned parking. You can see down below we have 928 stalls today. We are proposing an 1,100 stall garage. And I'm going to have Sam just briefly go over some of the formula and then I think leave it to questions. So just kind of briefly how we got there.
Thank you, Debbie. So it's always challenging to right-sizing the new parking garage because we all know the future trend is still unpredictable. But the current shortage of the parking space within the county adjacency, we run a consultant's survey. It's about a shortage of 270 to 300 parking space. Now, with the new introduction of the new county office building and the new promenade, we're probably going to be displace additional 200 to 300 parking stalls. So it is a great need just to deal with the current shortage, and to be scientific or data driven, we actually have the help from our Office of Sustainability's help, Jim Eggemeyer and Daniel Lee's help, along with their TMD, the traffic demand management TDM alternates approach. Plus, we hired 2 more traffic consultants, Hexagon and Nelson Nygaard, to help us to really shape, what is the ultimate requirement for this new parking garage. We decided with a capacity close to 1,100 parking stalls, that's probably sufficient and not, it's probably we would have maybe 50 to 150 cushion in case there's some influx of the visitors or any other requirements. So we think this is the right sizing, and I just want to report that it's very conservative. We don't want to overbuild, but we also don't want to build a new garage with short-sighted for the deal with the current need. Thank you. Thank you, Debbie.
I will point out just a few features. So if we do 1,100 stalls, which we are proposing, this will be 7 stories. We're still in negotiation with Redwood City. Redwood City would like to partner with us. Redwood City would consume an entire floor. If that partnership does not materialize, then it'll be a 6-level structure. The other thing I wanted to point out is again, for generations to come, one of the things we'd like to do is if we are able to actually see a decline in cars coming to the campus, we think the right thing to do is to construct that ground floor, floor to ceiling height taller. So generations down the road, I'll be long gone, but they can convert that into something else if they see a decline in the need. So we think it's money well spent up front and today for possibility of conversion later. Okay.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, I have a couple too. Go ahead.
On this chart, new parking structure, 1,100 stalls, 7 levels. Down in the second box there, it says childcare, based on what is currently dedicated in childcare lot. As you know, childcare is a very difficult problem in Redwood City and throughout the county. And I thought there were discussions about expanding the child care facility. And so that does relate to parking. And I'm just curious if you could comment on that.
Thank you for that. So one of the things we did find is that, yes, it has been brought to our attention. And initially we were thinking of adding a daycare space into COB3. What we've decided to do, Mr. Maltby has challenged us to look at vacated spaces. Currently we have 130 families on a wait list of county employees. So instead of building new square footage in COB3 to accommodate that, we do think we could add it to the campus, but maybe in the 455 building, in the vacated human resources space, or some of these other spaces. We haven't begun to study that, but we really think that might be a better opportunity.
Yeah.
What that'll do to the campus traffic flow or parking, it may impact it, which with that 160 surplus, we hopefully can absorb that.
Thank you for the presentation. So yeah, I had the chance to spend some time with Deb yesterday trying to get my head into all these numbers. There's a lot going on here. And I think this is actually probably one of the harder things to puzzle out, just how big this should be, because there's so many variables. So right now, if Redwood City came in, you'd contemplate 7 levels. So how
7
how
levels
many
with
how
Redwood
many
City.
how many stalls per level is that?
151.
Okay. As I expressed to Deb yesterday, I'm a little nervous, maybe I might be in the minority, but about whether, this is more than we should be building, given the rapid change in the way people commute and get to work, and whether we can do better, for example, than 18% transportation demand management. And like, for example, on the assigned spaces, I can't remember if that's up here, but I recall it's like 121. And one thing I asked Mr. Eggemeyer earlier was, well, how are have we really we haven't finished our own. There's a separate initiative going on through his office on TDM, and there's the Redwood City TDM. I wasn't aware until now that the Redwood City floor was not entirely solid, because I thought they had already kind of bought into that. I heard from Mr. Maltby that if you're really going to take it, if you're really going to have to really push employees not to drive, it may require negotiations. But I think we should challenge ourselves to see if we can do a little better. And I may be convinced otherwise after thinking about it harder. But I guess my hope, Deb, would be that myself, and if anyone on the board wants to join me, could kind of just kick the tires on this a little bit, and then we might have some chance to think harder about it before everything's set in stone.
So I think yesterday you had asked those questions, and Sam, as far as timing, I think it was October. Was that correct, Sam? Sam, so we would have up until October to make some changes.
I mean, it would really be incumbent on Office of Sustainability to really push their work to get that done well in advance of that.
Right, okay. So
Mr. President, one thing to keep in mind, it's not simply employees that use the parking, and we have some degree more certainly control of employee parking, but the visitor serving parking is, in terms of transportation demand management, is something, and particularly for the courts, that we don't have a lot of control over, frankly. And there's a downside to overbuilding. There's also a big downside to underbuilding,
Right.
Because you're not going to ever be able to go back in this campus and replace that parking.
Right. Right. There is, and again, perhaps I'm proven wrong. I just, parking garages are quickly kind of falling out of style. So again, I'm pleased to hear we have a little time to push on it a little bit.
If I might, through the president, I really like Debbie Bazan's idea about having the ground floor with the higher ceiling, because if it turns out that we were overbuilding, then we could do something else with that space. But more than anything else, my sense is that parking is such a premium in downtown Redwood City. It's choking a lot of this area. There are people who, if they were going to say come to my office, they're oftentimes late because they're driving all over the place and they're driving blocks away to try and find parking. So I think that I'd be concerned about underbuilding. I think, especially if we're going to bring more employees from our health department, I think that this is probably right size, and I'd be reluctant to actually downsize the parking structure.
Yeah, I understand that perspective, and I may be convinced on that in time, but the world's changing really fast. I mean, there was no such thing as Uber and Lyft. This TDM is really taken over. We got to get people out of cars. We preach that. We preach high density housing combined with transportation. That's our only shot at it. When we built the jail, we overbuilt that, and we hoped that we could use the space for something else. We really couldn't. So, there's risk both ways. So again, ultimately a decision will be made, and I just would like to probe on a little bit.
So we are reporting back to this board quarterly, and instead of picking 5 new projects, I can add this one back on in the 3 months, and we can make that a final decision then and see where we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think that will come down to a pretty simple decision in that it won't require too much work by you. In that, if Redwood City comes in, and if you have 150 per level, it's whether we have 7 stories or 6 stories. It probably comes down simple as
And
that.
we'll know by then as well.
Yeah.
So we can put this back on the agenda for the next study session, the parking structure.
Deb, if I may, Mr. President, I think Supervisor Pine brings up some really good points. The sharing economy, things are changing. I think Supervisor Pine's observation about how these things play, and I know play out, and planners are changing on how they're doing things and how they're addressing it. At the same time, I can understand, others' concern around not providing enough parking. So I think, you have to come back to this particular board with, due diligence and sort of explain to us what the pros and cons are. Okay?
Happy to do that.
Okay, Supervisor Goom.
I think that since you've got Nelson Nygaard engaged, and we've worked with them in other in other jobs before, but I think there's a lot of things to look at. The Caltrain could be electrified by 2020, 2021. If that's the case, it's going to have many more stops and be able to carry many more people. So hopefully we could do, I think, that's first thing. Second thing, I think, is that, we should have some express buses by 2021 so that you can get here a lot quicker than you can now if you're near a bus stop. And maybe we can look at an enhancement of our employee commuter program that would provide better incentives to stay out of the garage. But I think, again, if things go well in the transportation world, we'll have some better opportunities for commuting by the time we get to the time the garage is finished. So I think if Nelson Nygaard can help us figure that out, we'll have some better numbers maybe.
Thank you. Okay. And again, the parking structure, we will stay on track. It's the completion will be the end of 2020, and we're hoping to begin construction in August of 19. Originally, the project was a swag because we weren't sure of the size. At 1,100 stalls, the project will be about $47 million, and that does include the Z&E. So that'll be an all-in project cost.
Well, I actually had one other kind of important question, I think. Well, I think important to me anyway. I assume you're probably going to build it in a way so one thing we know that's going to happen in the lifetime of this garage is that every one of those cars is going to be electric. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So are we going to have that locked, totally ready for that?
Absolutely. So Watry, the parking consultants and the architects are working on that as well.
Right. It may not need chargers for everyone when it opens, but it will at some point.
It will have chargers. It does impact the Z&E and makes it a little more difficult to achieve, but we're going to weigh that balance.
That's a negative?
Yes.
Yeah. Again, I mean, there's kind of the conduit or the infrastructure, which I would think you'd have to do, and then the chargers, you do some now, and then as EVs become more popular, but the conduit, probably need to put that in, I would think.
Would make sense.
The federal government is making more and more dollars available for charging stations and for other things. So we should probably, work with the Supervisor Canup and I are on the Air District. We should probably start talking to them about getting in line for some of that dark charging dollars.
Right. Okay. That's our federal
government? Actually, yes. I know. We were all sort of stunned when we got that word, but yeah.
All right. The next project is the Lathrop House, and I'll just briefly touch on this myself, is that why are we moving the Lathrop House? Here is what it'll visually look like once it's placed next to the History Museum. There's a couple steps here that we still are going through, and that's working with the historical group, the National Historic Group, trying to move this house, yet still maintain its national registry. So we'll be at that meeting in May to make sure that when the house does move, it does maintain its national registry. The other reason we want to move it is, one, not only to make way for the new COB3, but also to increase, we're hoping, the visitors. Right now, the visitorship is very low. We think with an opportunity next to the History Museum, it'll make it a easy flow. They want to do something with one ticket that gets you into the History Museum and the Lathrop House. So that's an exciting opportunity. The exciting part about this project is, if all goes well, that house is sailing down the road this August. We originally thought it would be about $900,000. We're tracking at $1 million. The project will be completed in November of 2018.
That's exciting.
And the last project I'd like to talk about briefly is the Regional Operations Center. So the why. Again, why did we do it's fondly known as the Rock? And it's to create an essential services building to withstand a seismic event. As everyone knows, in that building is going to be the Dispatch Center 911, the Office of Emergency Services. We have some training rooms, and then the data center. So the exciting part about this presentation is we're actually going to walk you through this building. But again, just a couple of highlights is this project started in November of 2015, and steel is up today, going up today. You can see it hoisted in the air. So I'm really excited this project is going, and we had some struggles. I mean, we thought there was one underground tank there. We encountered 4. So there's been a lot of unforeseen conditions on this project, but happy to report out it's now moving. And again, to fortify that seismic and essential services requirement, it has these deep soil mixing columns, and 354 of those columns will be under that foundation. So that's going to be a very strong, safe building. We are tracking this project to be completed in April of 2019. The other really exciting part is that we're planning on hosting our topping out festivities, which was the last piece of steel that will go on the building. Right now, that ceremony, will have the invitations go out once it's solidified, but we're tracking for May 11th. So exciting times. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott Gurley. Keith Anderson is the project manager on this. He couldn't be with us today, but Scott is also the project manager and supports Keith. And we're going to take you visually through the building right now.
Thank you, Deb. Honorable Board of Supervisors, County Manager, County Council, thank you. So we're going to play the video of the fly through of a couple key areas of the rock. If you can go ahead and hit play right now. This is pretty much possible because of the use of BIM, and I don't think this was mentioned yet, but we're using BIM, which is building information modeling, on all of our projects. And we're able to use that technology to coordinate our systems, to make them more efficiently built, to make schedules more achievable, and then also to do fly-throughs like this. And this is kind of a fun fly-through, but it really does provide value. In some cases, we were able to identify the fact that our FF&E workout room package was not going to fit all of the equipment just by putting our Oculus on and seeing the room. How it would actually be and having that spatial analysis. So this is the main lobby. We'll go ahead and fly around a couple of these key areas, but it's pretty cool to feel the building while you got pretty much a dirt lot out there. Right now we've just got steel starting, and we're able to really feel the building. And so this is going over to the data center, which is pretty major for all the guys that work in data centers. They all agree that this is a substantially robust data center. It's the hub of the emergency services, the public safety communication. It's a predominant data center. So there's a lot of coordination that has to go on in there, and the use of BIM and the use of virtual reality and these fly-throughs really helps coordinate all of the systems and the different trade contractors that are going to be working in there. So from here we'll head over to the dispatch area. So I think that anybody that's working in that dispatch is going to be pretty excited about this new area. Kind of no expense spared here. We got everyone what they need. The setups are top of the line, high quality. So it's gonna be a great upgrade from what the faculty members of the dispatch use right now. So
That's amazing.
we put PDU subliminally in every shot, just some branding. But that's it. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Have the dispatchers seen that video?
I think a couple of them are in the audience, but this is their first time seeing it. And the exciting part about that Scott pointed out, so that's their actual furniture. So Scott was able to get the specs from what they've selected and put that in the video fly-through. So that's that. So it's exciting. We're excited for them to move in. And in closing, I have one last thing. You were given some packets. So as you know, construction trades are in high demand right now. And so we were thinking outside the box, how can we create San Mateo County, how can we become a client of choice and not a client of opportunity? And so what could we do differently to encourage people to want to partner with us, to want to work with us, to help us on our projects? So we created this orientation, kind of an onboarding, and I have to say, I have to give shout outs to Steve Monowitz, I'm not sure if he's still here, Miles Hancock, John Brennan, and then Cal Fire, Mark Stewart. So right now, they actually come to the trailer when we hire a new architect or construction manager, and they share in advance their expectations. So what is it that you need to do to submit a pay application that gets accepted and approved at the first shot? Or if you're coming in from out of town, here's some local restaurants and here's some hotel opportunity, places to stay. But what their expectations are, we're actually going to be bringing the building inspectors who they'll be on site, meeting them in advance. And so they're telling these folks in advance how to make this easier for you in the process. We did our very first orientation, and I will say that we had I think it was in the business for 30 years, was an architect for, it was Canon Design. At the end of it, the comments were very overwhelming. He said, in all of his 30 years, he has never had a county entity welcome them and explain the expectations in advance of setting the first foot on the job site. So I felt like we did a great job. So what you have there is just a brief packet that we provide. I think it's going to grow our speakers to environmental health and to a few others. So with that, I have nothing else.
Mr. President, I would also like to add my thanks to Deb and her outstanding team, and of course all of the architects and consultants that have worked on this. Also, Mr. Callaghan. All these projects take a lot of executive oversight and time, and also to be the champion for the dispatchers from day one. When Mike came, he said that we're going to have a world-class dispatch center, and in fact, we're going to have a world-class dispatch center.
Yes, thank you. And if you don't mind, can I just have my staff stand up really quickly?
Please do.
Oh, I need to. I would be lost without them. I could not do what we do.
How do we get one of those cool PDU jackets right there?
Now that you're heading up the technology team, you get one.
I also want to thank Adam Ely, Deputy County Counsel from my office. He's having more fun than most lawyers have practicing law. He's having a lot of fun.
Thank you for pointing that out. I think, again, we're doing things so differently. So John Brennan from the building department actually has a cubicle in our trailer now as well and is there part-time. Adam Ely does, so I like to bring my attorney with us everywhere we go. So it's this huge collaboration of a lot of people, a lot of departments, and I'm really, really proud and happy to be part of it. So.
Terrific job, really. And this was a brilliant idea to do this welcoming package. Really, really creative, as everything you do is. We're really fortunate to have the team. Thank you. This is an exciting time for San Mateo County. Any final comments? Otherwise, we can go back to our more boring stuff. Yeah, excuse me. Day to day. We'll move back to the day to day now that we've seen the future.